out of St. John's.
So what can you teach us now?
What do you want to know?
Something.
That is a list of the deans and the monarchs they served under
Okay.
from the beginning. And this is Gerald Wellesley, who is the first Duke of Wellington's, tells you all that if you can be bothered to read it, the nephew of the first Duke of Wellington and the youngest son of his younger brother. And he was dean in 1854.
Uh-huh. Well, what's the role?
Favourite of Queen Victoria.
Victoria. So what's the role of the dean?
The dean presides over here. When you go to the shop, when you finish the tour, you will see the dean's cloister, and he lives in the house which is the other side.
Oh.
And he presides over major services in the chapel. His deputies would take the various services like matins, the Holy Communion in the morning, and that sort of thing, and the evening evensong.
Okay.
But there are other services, and certainly when the Queen comes here, but the Queen actually doesn't worship here when she is in Windsor. She worships in Chapel Royal, which is up the long walk near the statue of George III.
Okay.
On the left-hand side.
How many chapels are on this ground?
I'm sorry?
How many chapels are on this ground?
Well, this is the main St George's Chapel, which is called a chapel because it's a royal peculiar, you call it. It's like a cathedral, really, but cathedrals have a diocese, and this doesn't.
Okay.
And that's why it's called a royal peculiar. And behind other chapels, there is the Albert Chapel, which unfortunately you can't go into. But when you go up the steps at the end there, when you go round, you go to the shop and then you go out. But when you go out, in the corridor that goes behind the altar here, is the Albert Chapel, which is built by Queen Victoria it was originally built in 1271, I think, but it was extended by Edward IV, and it's called the Albert Chapel because Prince Albert was there.
He was
for
there.
The first 10 years of after he passed on. Before they built Frogmore, which is, if you go down the long walk and on the left-hand side, there is the mausoleum where he and Queen Victoria are.
Okay.
But actually in the chapel you have 10 of the monarchs buried here, which the Queen's parents are along there. The Queen's grandparents on the left down at the end, which you will have already passed.
Right.
George III, George IV and William IV are in the main royal vault, which is under the altar and also under the...
that's where we're going to go next.
You're going to have a look. Well, you can't see anything, but there is a tablet to show you where the steps are to go down into the royal vault. And Charles I and Henry VIII are in the choir, and you will pass by that.
Okay.
And Edward VII and Henry VI are on the right-hand side of the altar, and Edward IV is just along here on the right.
And when was this chapel built?
When?
Yeah.
It was built between 1475 and 1516, I think.
Okay.
And the woodwork, which you'll see in the choir, is original, except part of it was destroyed in the Civil War in the 17th century and has been restored since. It's made of English oak and is most intricate and requires cleaning quite often.
Oh, yes. All right, thank you.
And in the choir, well, you probably ought to ask who's on duty in the choir, but you have all the banners of the Garter, the most honourable and noble order of Garter, and there are 24 of those which are up this end. And the foreign royals are in the middle, and the royal family, which you can see part of, that's the Duke of Kent's banner there, round this end. So have a look and ask some more questions.
Sure.
around there. Well, you might have some. I've been gabbling on a bit, so if you've got any questions on that, I'll be very pleased to answer.
Okay.
I ought to stand up, really.
Thank you.
But my knees are not very brilliant these days, so I tend to sit down.
How long have you
3
been
hours
here?
is quite a long time.
How long have you been here?
I've been doing this since 2009,
2009. Okay.
but I only do 2 sessions a month, of which this is one of them.
Okay. All
But
right.
it's very interesting. You always learn something every time you come here, and this is the most amazing place. And I'm particularly interested in history and heraldry as well, and the combination of both.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of
Where are
history
you from?
here. I'm from
USA?
New York. Yes.
New York, yes. Very good.
Yes. All right. It's not a
What do
busy
you
day
think of
today.
your president? Don't answer that if you don't want to.
A lot of people ask that question.
Well, actually, funnily enough, I thought it would be a complete disaster, but actually he's got some very good ideas. And whether he'll ever be able to carry them out is I think he's beginning to understand it isn't quite as straightforward as signing bits of paper.
Right.
It happens, because it
Right.
doesn't.
There's a lot of compromise in negotiating and
Exactly.
back dealing, but hey, what can we do? He's in
Yes,
power
I think
now.
it's what's interesting to us over here is the fact that we decided on Brexit
Right.
had quite an impact on, if you like, the impossible happening in the US. And I think there was quite a bit of sort of thrust that way.
Right.
Which made that happen.
And
But,
what you're seeing going across, I mean, in most countries right now, everyone is trying to secure their borders. And
Well, we are, and actually there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it, but with it comes this almost an extreme idea or ideology of how to go about
Yes.
doing it.
The point that we've never, actually I've got to move on at half, no it's all right, I've got a couple of minutes. What we have discovered is that we want to do that, but what we don't want to do is to stop the foreign people who have got qualifications, who can contribute a lot to this country and are going to work. And actually even a lot of the Polish community are doing a very good job in the construction industry.
Right.
Actually. And because a lot of our people decide that they're not paid enough and they won't do it, and they'd rather not do it. But
Right.
that actually doesn't help the industry at all.
Right.
But equally, what we don't want to do is to have a whole lot of people who see this as the sort of holy grail, and they want to come here because they'd be better off, even though they're not intending to contribute into it. And
Right.
that is the big problem,
And that's
I think.
right. And it's so hard to separate the good from the bad.
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly. And we
know.
haven't succeeded in doing it, not remotely.
Right.
But what we did do in the early part of this century is allow a lot of people in, just open the borders and in you come. And that was bad, because that should never have happened.
And that's his philosophy. And it's the same thing we have with Mexico and the South. And
But
they're
I mean,
coming.
Trump's idea of building
Building
a
a
wall
wall
is
is
absolutely
extreme.
ludicrous. They're going to get round the end of it, and all sorts of things.
They're also
The cost of it.
Peter.
Anyway, righto, anyway, nice to talk to you. And your name is what?
Smiley, Robert Smiley. All right.
Certainly do that.
Oh, yes. Thank you.